guys? Welcome back to the Mike Force Podcast. It is your host, of course, Mike G. Today we're talking about all the questions you asked me via my Instagram post, which I tweeted and then screen captured that and put, "The world isn't falling apart, your preparation is. Put down your phone and cut the dependency on the systems that own you. Build out a plan to gain back your independence and become more self-reliant like now." And I said it's never too late. And it's true. It's never too late. Your preparedness starts with the education. It starts with kind of an understanding what that is. That's what we do at Fieldcraft Survival. Make sure you check us out at fieldcraftsurvival.com because we are all in on supporting you to be your best prepared for the worst case scenario. That's content on YouTube. That is, just Google us. You'll find everything. That's a podcast that we've been doing for years now, and all free training to allow you to get in the right state of mind to get prepared to live the lifestyle that is living your prep life. On this, I'm just going to go through these questions and just kick it off because I know I want to stick to some of you guys' normal commutes. I just came off a pretty short and terrible fit of food poisoning because I was off grid with the fam doing some cross-pollinating of bacteria, I guess. That's what happens when you're out in the backcountry. But I learned that hard lesson. I drank some contaminated water is what happened. Wound up getting a stomach bug, and that lasted about 48, 72 hours. Couldn't keep any fluid down. It's important that you try to stay hydrated because if you can, that would reduce all of the issues, but let that stuff flow through your system. Hydration is most of the effects that you, or dehydration is most of the effects that you feel. But that happens, man. And that's why we talk about this preparedness stuff, because you're not going to be in the optimal scenario. You're not going to be living at the Sheraton. You're not going to be super comfortable. Hygiene, soap. Like, who puts soap in their kit or their go bag? You should. Who puts baby wipes in their long-term survival plan? You should. Hygiene's very important. Antibiotics is very important. And maybe we'll get some of those questions today. This first question comes from easymoney_85 on Instagram. It says, run through a hypothetical scenario the first 30 days of the grid going down. What happens? Everyone says they will head to the mountains and hunt food that will last a week before all wild animals are wiped out. I'd really like to hear your thoughts on what 30 days would look like in the U.S. I remember when the power went out in southern IS for about 4 to 5 hours and every gas station was jam-packed and the canned food shelves were all bare within hours. So yeah, great question, because in the first 30 days, it's important to kind of identify what will happen catastrophically, because that might outline your plan for preparedness. Like if I outline, historical references, which I have many, or just hypotheticals in your own situation, you could determine, hey, I live in Montana. Well, what do you think is going to be one of the first things to get taken off the shelves? Well, have you thought about wood? Have you thought about propane? Have you thought about space blankets? Like, what's going to keep you warm when the power and infrastructure go out for 30 days in the middle of wintertime in the middle of Montana? So here's what you should understand about the first 30 days. One, if you're not prepared or you're ill prepared, the infrastructure that you live in, which is based on a free market capitalism, is very volatile and will fracture first, right? Like you just said, 4 to 5 hours of no power, everybody's at the gas station. Well, everybody's initial reaction is to take hold or gain as many resources as they can in the things they know they need. So gasoline's number one, food's number two. So food and water. It's like I grew up in Florida and North Carolina where hurricanes were pretty substantial. Hurricane season was a thing. We practiced getting under our desk. We even had some real close calls of tornadoes ripping through our school. So when you look at what the physical infrastructure will be, it will be in a state of utter collapse. And when the first thing happens, one of the first thing that happens in hurricane preparedness is people get wood and nails and board up their windows. People go to the store and get eggs, milk, bacon, and it's like, what? Like, why are people doing that? Well, that's usually people's they're cycling through their shelf life in their fridge. What they don't understand is that store they're shopping in has a battle rhythm of the shelf cycle as well. And that's about 2 weeks. It's 1 to 2 weeks depending on where you're at. If you live in a densely populated area, likely you have a lot more stores than a less populated area. But let's say the local Walmart is supporting all of the infrastructure or all of the populace around the Walmart. That's how they work. That's how they identify their demographic. They do a geographical study. They do a business study, a traffic study. They do all these economic and marketing studies to identify how long will that Walmart keep its stuff on the shelves. The average is 1 to 2 weeks, which means if everybody flexed to the store outside of extraordinary conditions, remember, normal conditions is you go every other day or once a week and you do your grocery run. Well, if everybody does that to stockpile, you can imagine very rapidly all of this will start degrading. It already happened in recent history when COVID-19 hit us. Everybody hit the grocery stores. And as everybody went to the grocery stores, they started pulling things off the shelf. We saw the lines of toilet paper and paper towels and people fighting. Well, that's what's happening in the first couple days of a catastrophe. The reason I want you to be prepped is because when you're prepared on the back end, you're not one of those out fighting for basic resources because you already have that. You're fixing the security parameters to tie things up to make sure you and your family are protected, because that's where everybody's at fault. Remember, natural catastrophes or catastrophes, period, turn into man-made catastrophes very quickly. That's because people start fighting for resources, especially in densely populated areas where now you have 1,000 people living in a building on top of each other. Well, that building no longer could support those people, and they displace. It's basically a space issue. So then they get out and they start looking for resources. Where are they going to use a restroom? Where are they going to get food? And now they hit the streets. And then you got chaos and calamity. So even if you live in a densely populated area, which you can't help because you work there or you live there, then I recommend that you have a bug out plan to get to a place where you could break contact. The idea also that people are going to hit the mountains and go hunting, not likely. I mean, how many people do you know, even in your own circles, who've never been hunting, who don't have a hunting rifle, who don't even know the start point? So if you, hunting for me is fairly new because, especially backcountry hunting, well, there's not a lot of people in it. During hunting season, there's not a lot of people out and about, and you got to train up for it. How many people you think can hit the mountains, start looking for food, and actually fare well with a rifle without any understanding of how to hunt? So I don't think that's is realistic. But hey, if you've already prepped 60 to 90 days at a minimum of food, water, hygiene, the list goes on, then you're already ahead of the curve. One guy says, I grow lettuce all day. Come at me, Mike. In this day and age, you better have a basic plan. So true. It's hard to find like-minded individuals here where I live in Japan. Community is a big part of survival and preparedness and is honestly my weakest link. Let me just touch on that. Community is most people's weakest link right now because you think because you have friends on Facebook and Instagram that you have a network. A lot of people I know, even in my own circle, think they know the people in their network because they know them. Even if they meet them, but do they really know that person and then their network? Like, if you don't know your friends, family, and friends, then they're not your closest friends. And not to say they can't be trusted, but what I mean is, who is going to be fending for resources and prioritizing their family at the top of that list as your associate or as your Facebook or Instagram follower? So I'm going to be taking care of me and my family and my friends, my closest friends. So you need to establish not only a relationship with the people who live next door to you, because by physical proximity alone, you're going to have to depend on each other and lean on each other, but also having a network of friends that are friends that will do anything for you, where you could allocate your resources and team up to take care of each other. That's important. So somebody says, it's amazing all this is falling apart and all that is falling together. Thanks again for the knowledge you put out. Is deeply appreciated here in Maple Syrup side. That means a lot. Prepare physically for you and your family. Definitely, that is biblical. But what also is biblical is Jesus is coming soon to his church. You need to look to Jesus and get saved. Oh wow. Okay. No, I mean, hey, point taken. Opinion on solar generators. So they don't work. I mean, solar generators. I don't think that's even a thing. I think he meant like solar powered inverters or solar energy. Solar panels, from my experience in testing them, even the best ones, are good for trickle charging small electronics, but nothing substantial. They're good for lights. I mean, they're good. They're great for a lot of things. What they're not good for is powering heat, for example. They're not good for powering long-term electricity requirements in refrigerators. I have a good setup in the back of my Land Cruiser, for example, and it runs off the alternator that charges the battery, and that's not even enough. I mean, it's just not very beneficial. You know what's better than a solar-powered anything is a gas-powered generator. You know what's better than that is a diesel-powered generator and having a lot of diesel stored. What's great about a generator, well, here's the first thing you should understand. Your bug-out vehicle or bug-in vehicle, your mobility vehicle, is a great platform, and it's also a generator. So you could invert that power and use it to power anything you need, but it's also a rolling generator. Now, the significance behind that is that vehicle can be used as a bug-out platform. It could be used as shelter. It could be used as heat, air, water containment, food containment. It's basically a vessel, and it's the best thing in survival. So if you have plenty of fuel, then you have essentially a generator in your driveway. They even sell kits that invert power so you could use your vehicle as a generator. If you've got a vehicle that is very economical, that's even better because you can get more extended range off of less fuel. Typically, that's more miles per gallon via a smaller vehicle. You're not going to get that in a off-road vehicle, especially a four-wheel drive. But hey, it's better than a solar-powered anything. On community, I got a AmCon group checking in. AmericanContingency.com, guys. We built a American community because of all the stuff that was going on with BLM and Antifa, which is unfortunate, but it was happening, where people were coming into neighborhoods, people were coming into civilian populations and burning businesses and damaging homes. That's scary, especially if you have a family. You want to protect your family. And the last thing I want to do is hurt anybody that's just trying to peacefully protest. But when it comes to violence, and that changes things, right? There were people whose homes and businesses, doors were getting kicked in and burned to the ground. There was, right now, I think accounted-wise, a couple dozen murders that are accounted during those BLM and Antifa protests. That's scary, guys. That's super scary. So we started American Contingency for the ability for people to look into a network, AmericanContingency.com, and find people in your backyard that you could link up with. Now, people originally thought the intent was me to, hold everybody's hand and quick react and train everybody. Look, there's only one me. There's 50,000 members of American Contingency. So what we do smartly is we embed content. We communicate the things that we're doing, and then we allow people with the tools, with the right tools. We provide the tools. We allow them to network and to build relationships. And if need be, American Contingency groups can mobilize and help people who are in distress, who are going through a natural man-made catastrophe. I do want to announce on this podcast, because I haven't done it before really formally, we have stood up the Fieldcraft Fund. The entire point of the fund is to help Americans in catastrophe in the worst case scenario. That's providing material aid and support, volunteer support from American Contingency, to leverage that support to beat FEMA, because you are your own first response. If you have access in your own backyard, in your own region via American Contingency, and can get the supplies you need, whether that's food, water, aid, material support like wood, nails, you name it, and that's accessible for you, you don't have to wait on FEMA. You should be doing that anyway. And we should be depending and leaning on each other, which is the entire point of the program. I have a question. What is a good way to prepare when you're really young and have a type 1 diabetic? What are the things I should be prepping for? And a type 1, when really young, and a type 1 diabetic. So this person is young and a type 1 diabetic. That's a good question. So a lot of these questions that pertain to medical response and care are essential. I mean, it doesn't take a mega catastrophe to destroy the infrastructure, to shut down supply chains that are going to limit your ability to get life-saving equipment and drugs. So let's say with COVID, for example, as a study, there were a lot of people who passed away because of COVID and all the limitations that were put on the care, even inpatient procedures, right? Transplants, the list goes on, because we had a limit of medical people that were able to help. We had a limitation on equipment. We had limitation on the staffing and the placement and capacity. I mean, that's scary. Like, to think my loved one passed away from not getting the transplant they needed because somebody else was in that position and had COVID. It's like, how can we address that? A lot of these things you could take into your own hands. When it comes to antibiotics, when it comes to basic medicine that you need for your care, you need to think ahead and have a plan to start carrying that in a contingency, and also identifying the places that you would go, even the doctors that you would seek, to be able to get the stockpile of that or the supply of that, because it might not be on the shelf, right? It might be a logistical supply chain woe. If we got cut off by every major country in the world right now, this country would be in a world of hurt, because we outsource not only products, but we outsource a lot of the material and ingredient that makes the product, that makes the drug, that makes the thing, you name it, it comes from overseas in some segment. So without that, where are you going to be? Do you have the insulin? Do you have the medication? Do you have the antibiotics? Do you have the things that are going to mitigate and potentially stop viruses, bacteria, disease in its tracks? Please think about that. I mean, I use the analogy of or the example of ranger school. I mean, I got cellulitis on my knee from taking a knee and the opening of my skin cracking subtly, and then that causing a bacterial or an infection. That is bad, and that is how fragile we are. That is so fragile. We are so fragile when it comes to hygiene issues, bacterial issues. We're weak. I mean, we die from basic bacterial and viral infections more than anything in the world, and that's something that we should pay attention to. Okay, let me see the next question. Best steps to take on when on a budget. Currently getting finances in order, so can't afford training courses or stocking up on stuff. But what is the best path forward with initial investment? That's a very good question. I think somebody said focus on water first, then food, then supplies. Tactical training needs to come last. Your first purchase should be a water filter like a Berkeley or something similar with lots of filters. No, that's not okay. So I'm gonna trump. I mean, it's not bad advice. It's just advice. I wouldn't say it's the greatest advice. So they say focus on water first. Well, that's not necessary. What you should focus on is having an understanding of your circumstance. That's the first start point. Like if you live in Idaho, would water be a concern for you? No, because per capita, there's more water in that state than anywhere on the planet. So fresh water sources won't be an issue. So is that your biggest concern? No. Like, what are you going to put the water in? How are you going to sanitize and purify the water? Like you said, get a water filter. You don't need a water filter. You can use Clorox bleach as long as you have a container. Look, the first step is looking at your current geographical location and then the extremes. What's the most dangerous thing going to kill you in primal survival in austere environments? It's exposure to the elements. So do you live in a place that has massive temperature swings between hot and cold? Because that will kill you first. So you need to look at shelter, right? But before that, which is your basic principles of survival, security is important. Like they said, training courses would be your last thing. I don't agree with that. I mean, the great thing about training, period, is we offer the resources, and a lot of other people offer the resources for totally free. So it starts with being resourceful. So let's think about security. It starts with a security plan. So what is your security plan right now? If you're in harm's way right now, do you have a link-up point or a link-up plan with friends and family? Do you have a vehicle? Does that vehicle have less than half a tank of gas? Can you get to your family and friend's house via another means if the freeways and the highways and the roads are shut down? So you need a link-up plan because you need to allocate your resources with your community. If you don't have family, I encourage you to go to jiu-jitsu, to go to your local range, start building relationships, and find that network in that community. Go AmericanContingency.com and find the group for you. But that is going to be your resources and assets, because you might be good at security, right? You might be good at basket weaving. Be an asset for somebody. But if you don't have the money, you could be super resourceful when it comes to primal survival. Blankets, that's good for shelter, especially if you're sheltering in place. Water containers, bladders, free water containers that you have, 1 gallon jugs. You don't have to stockpile a whole bunch of water if you have water readily available. Now, if you live in Yuma, Arizona, you might want to have a stockpile, right? But if you live in Idaho, like I said, you don't need to have a stockpile of water. You need to have a stockpile of containers for that water. Also, cycle through the water. And look, water's cheap, right? This is why I'm saying water. Food, not the biggest of concerns. You can go 30 days without food, but you don't want to affect your cognition. But how much food can you make from raw foods that you can jar and can? And again, be resourceful. That's not super expensive either. One of the things I would focus on in your security plan is a plan of action for what you're going to do to defend human life, your life, against potential people trying to take your resources, even how limited they potentially will be. You need to be able to defend yourself. You need to have a plan of evasion. Like, how are you going to bug out from your place and break contact? Do you have a go bag inside of your vehicle? If you have a go bag in your vehicle, that could be the potential supply for you in your vehicle, but it's also a supply that you could put on your back and break contact away from your vehicle, extending your range. Now this might sound like a lot of information. What I would tell you to do is go to the Fieldcraft Survival podcast and listen to that, because that will set you up for success. Mike, the world is falling apart. I don't think it is, guys. I mean, look, there's a lot of things that have gone on in the world that we haven't talked about, like Rwanda in the Clinton administration, Libya when Hillary Clinton was the head of the State Department when I was there, Yemen of recent when the Houthis took over and there was a whole bunch of people dying, Syria. We forget Syria. I mean, thousands upon thousands of civilians were killed in Syria. It's like all of these things were happening while the media wasn't reporting on it. And that's something that happens, I wouldn't say routinely, but it's something that happens. So don't be pessimistic about the situation. If you do feel that way, focus your attention on helping yourself get better prepared, and that will build the confidence and security in your situation. A little every day, don't try it all at once. Practice it, an item or two, be persistent. Yeah, I guess. I know a lot of people are say like, hey, let's just start this a little bit at a time, but it's not hard, guys. Being prepared doesn't have to be convoluted with insecurity and fear and all these scary things. Like stockpiling food is what people did in normal America when we didn't have Amazon Prime. I mean, I remember growing up, you ever grow up with a pantry? I mean, now it's like a pantry. It's like, what? What's a pantry? Well, I just order it online and it shows up at my doorstep. Well, you had a pantry because you can go days or weeks without going grocery shopping because you wanted a stockpile. That's all we're doing. We're extending our capability via our capacity or space. And we got plenty of space. We're the fattest, healthiest, and largest country on the planet when it comes to wealth and space. Here's a comment from eChurch25. While we certainly are in challenging times, not sure I agree with most of the comments that say it is falling apart. Community is big, help each other. My question would be about water sources. 72 hours of water on hand, filters, what is best or ideal, especially if you need to bug out. Well, some of the best ones that I've seen is like Grail. The company Grail makes a great water filtration system where you put the water in the container, you push the filter through the water, which rids the contaminants, gets rid of the protozoa, gets rid of the bacteria. I love that one. But nothing beats a little mini jar of iodine tablets. You can get them at Walmart, super cheap. What's just as good as that? Clorox, household bleach. If you have that inside of a container, that's good for purifying water. You needed to know the droplet. It's just not as robust, right? But it's super good for decontaminating and killing all the things that are bad in water. What I like, especially for my motorcycle days, when I used to ride single track, it's just me in the back country off by myself. I loved that time in my life. It was amazing. Oh man. But I used to carry blivets and bladders, like a Camelback on my back, which is good, 100 to 200 ounces. But then I have a huge roll-up bladder that you could fill up gallons upon gallons. Sometimes they use them for fuel. They have fuel type ones, but you could also use other ones for water. So now in your panniers, on your bike, in your backpack, you can have large quantities of water that you can load out. Now, there is a point of diminishment, right? When you're carrying a lot of weight, you're using a lot of water. So it's better to go water source to water source and have a reserve, and that reserve not being overwhelmingly heavy. But you also want the ability to capture the water, properly filtrate the water, and then properly purify the water when it's inside. That's key. That's super important. Have you and the team at Fieldcraft ever thought about doing a prepping 101 course or seminar? That way in one place we would know how and where to start, like a prepper starter kit, just a thought. Let me text back this guy and say it right now. We do these all the time. I'll be doing them at your local BRCC coffee shop soon. So guys, we've been doing free preparedness, survival 101 seminars since I started the company. One of the reasons I started that is because I wanted to get buy-in from you in the conversation that is preparedness, of understanding, hey, what is Fieldcraft all about? What is this whole prepping thing all about? We had that conversation. We had 20 people show up the first time. The last one I did in Texas at a Black Rifle Coffee, I had 200 people pack into a room, which is awe-inspiring. It's just so amazing. So I've been doing it since the beginning of the company. We still do it today. If you haven't heard, Black Rifle coffee shops have a Fieldcraft section for first aid, survival, and getting you prepped to operate the outdoors. That's outdoor gear and apparel. That's all the stuff that we have. Guys, check out your local Black Rifle Coffee and go check us out. I think it's super awesome that we're in those coffee shops, and especially as they scale and grow, so we can have those conversations. It's going to be awesome. Buying land this week is a comment. That's awesome. Didn't know you had a podcast. Just subscribe. Super awesome. I should do that more. I should post that more. I agree. We all should do this, but that doesn't mean that the world is simultaneously falling apart along with my preparations. Hey, nobody said it is, and I agree. I hope people are listening to that message. I'm in medical school. I got 2 younger daughters. What are some of the most important things my wife and I can do on a very tight budget? Well, the first thing you could do is have a plan for you and your family in any catastrophe. Like, for example, you have kids. Catastrophe, we often think about the zombie apocalypse. We think about the Russia invasion. I want you to think about a fire in your home. Because when you build out the contingency plans and the plan of action, let me give you an example. We used to build plans of action for embassies and their emergency crisis plan for when things were falling apart. And this would be a plan of action coordinated across the entities in that embassy in the worst case scenario. You had people ripping through the walls in Libya, and everybody thought they're going to die. How did they survive? Did they initiate a plan? Did they have coordinating efforts? Did they understand the planning process? Did they understand the execution process because they rehearsed it? So all of the magical things that you figure out in a process of preparing for a natural disaster or a man-made disaster, like let's say it's a household fire, those things are going to allow you to implement the structure and plan in other elements of catastrophe. So, for example, right now, your fire plan. What is your fire plan? Zach_A_Forbes. What is your fire plan? And if the answer is like, well, we get each other and we run downstairs. Well, what happens if you're not awakened by the fire and your kid is? What is their plan to wake you up to make sure that you know? Well, it's the smoke alarm. Did you test your smoke alarm? No. Okay, when's the last time you changed the batteries? Oh, do you have fire extinguishers in your house? Do you have burn blankets? Do your kids know how to escape a fire? When's the last time they went over stop, drop, and roll? When's the last time they were taught how to stay low and out of the air where the smoke would rise to be close to the ground where they could breathe and potentially navigate themselves out of harm's way? So when you have the conversation, you start identifying the weakness, and then you can put together the pieces for the plan. Now, here's what I'll say, again, defaulting to my reference. We have plenty of podcasts on this very topic. So please go to the Fieldcraft Survival podcast, and we even talk about fire safety. Last question. Fieldcraft Survival probably has a quality land nav course, but for those who cannot get into Utah, could you give pointers on choosing a quality local land nav course? So, good question. We provide land navigation courses all across the country. Land nav is one of our most popular courses. It's very important as a skill set to know. And you could even find free YouTube videos at the Fieldcraft Survival channel on YouTube. And I'm pumped about it, guys. I didn't answer a lot of questions because there was overwhelmingly a lot, and it's already at 30 minutes, which is the average commute. But I'll do a part 2 of this so we can answer some more of those in the near future. Guys, I want to say thank you so much. I'm headed to Mexico for Rally of Nations today. Hope to have a good time and represent America well. I'm one of 2 cars. I'll be representing Black Rifle Coffee Company, Fieldcraft Survival, and of course, Rally Ready. Texas Dave will be driving his Rally Ready car, representing Black Rifle Coffee, as well as Fieldcraft Survival, and the Wolf 21, my CBD CBN company. You can get all the CBD CBN to get a good night's sleep at thewolf21.com. And I look forward to hanging out with Tom, our favorite Brit, who'll be representing his family's motorsports company in a very special car representing the UK. So here we go. Have a good week, man. Hope you guys are into preparedness and enjoyed this podcast. I'll have a part 2 coming at you real soon. Later, guys.